Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. I know I am. It's bright and early here. What I wanted to do this morning was take a second and break down my last hunt video that I posted where I killed 2 deer. I had a shot on a deer that was 45 yards. It was alert. It ended up not being a good shot. It was a lethal shot, but not exactly how you want a shot to go. But I don't think I would I would not take this shot again after breaking down this video, and I wanted to walk you guys through this. So it is late January now, the 28th, and really all we can do is learn from this. All I can do is learn from this, and I hope you guys learn something too, because we all know once that arrow leaves the bow, there's no bringing it back. So I'm going to step through this, try to learn something, and I hope you guys follow along and learn something here with me. Alright, so this first video here is going to be a full speed video of the shot. As you can see, the deer is alert, looking at me, obviously knows I'm there, stomping, looking right at me. Here's my draw. Alert. And right there you see I dropped her. Lethal shot. She was pretty much dead on impact. I say she. It was a button buck. He was dead on impact. Rewind it here. So in this second video, you can see I drew a line on the top of his back. This shot was 45 yards, 287 feet per second. The line actually is kind of on the top of his back, lower spot, the lower white patch of his neck. I'm going to go through this slow-mo now. And right here, I'll drop a point of impact. And yes, 100% definitely not where you want to hit a deer, not how you want this shot to go. Alright, slow-mo, drop the point of impact. The next thing I'm going to do, so this right here is the same video, but with my point of impact. So on this drop video, where I drew the point of impact line, you can see as I step through this line is going to end up pretty much above his head. So that deer, that white spot of the deer, the top of the back, it ends up above that deer's head once it starts to react. So that's how much that deer actually dropped. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to break it down a little bit more a little bit later in the video, but just for initial reference, that line ends up above the head of the deer. And like I said, not an ideal shot, but as you can see here, the point of impact ends up right on the back of the head of this deer. Once again, I want to stress, I am not proud of this shot. All I can do now is learn from the experience. I'm not condoning this shot to anyone. I'm just trying to share what I learned with all of you guys. And I'm trying to learn something myself here too. Get to my next. So here's this dot overlaid on the standing deer, but you can see I'm a little bit left. The deer is slightly quartering to. I would probably want to be kind of in this area a little bit more. So I'm a little left of where I should be releasing the arrow, which is just a couple inch miss by me. We'll play this back. So here it is again in super slow-mo. Now in this next video I'm going to break down here, I actually took it frame by frame on the camera, and I'm only limited to what the camera can take for frames per second, which happened to be 60. I was able to take that, use my arrow velocity, 287 feet per second, the yardage 45 yards, and with this I'm actually able to see how long this whole process took from the time I released the arrow to the time it hit the deer. And I broke it down frame by frame. And as you can see, in full speed, it took 0.467 seconds from the time I released that arrow to the time it impacted the deer. So in this next video, I broke it down even slower, and then I added, I took the exact same video from before, broke it down slower, and you can actually see in this video at what time in that arrow flight this deer started reacting. So what I'm seeing on this video is that this deer actually started reacting at 0.217 seconds from the release of the shot. In a previous video that I did on deer drop calculations, I theoretically calculated how long it would take for the sound to reach the deer, and at 45 yards, the sound would have reached this deer at 0.12 seconds. So the true reaction time of this deer was 0.091 seconds. And obviously that's from what I can measure with my camera. Not necessarily a high-speed camera, but 60 frames per second kind of gives us a good idea. Knowing that the velocity of an arrow released from a bow is linearly decreasing, I'm able to take the reaction time of 0.217 seconds, and I can back calculate exactly how far away from my bow this arrow is once this deer starts to react. So I'll do this little ratio. I'll use the total time of flight of this arrow, divide it by the yards, which is 45 yards, and then I will divide the 0.217 seconds by this value, and I will see that this arrow is roughly 20.9 yards once this deer starts to react. And being 20.9 yards from my bow means that this arrow is actually 24.1 yards from this deer. So this deer has 24.1 yards to react to anything it saw or heard up in the tree. Breaking it down even further, my arrow is going to take 0.25 seconds to go that last 24.1 yards. So this deer has 0.25 seconds to react. So starting at 0.2 seconds, 0.217 is where it's going to start moving, and then 0.467 is where it's going to impact. In these last clips, I went ahead and broke down the movement into inches, and in order to do that, I took the skull from this deer. I measured between its eyes, which was 3.25 inches. And that's not a perfect estimate because it's a little bit harder on a European mount. The best way would have been to actually measure something on the deer, like probably the white spot. That'd probably be the easiest to get the length measurement. But I took that, and what I did was I laid over the eyes in Lightworks, my video editing software, and I did the best I could to estimate the eye spacing, and I called that 3.25 inches, and in Lightworks you refer to line length as a percentage, so that came out to be 2%. I drew the line on the top of the back, and then I jumped forward. So I jumped forward to where he was at his, I'll call it the max duck, and from the top of his back it ended up that he actually dropped roughly 5.7 inches. And then in this next one, I actually put a line at the top of his head because I felt that this was where the most movement occurred, and that's actually where my point of impact was. And you can see that in 0.25 seconds, this deer's head moved 16.9 inches. Now that is crazy. Like I was expecting a big number, but 17 inches, that is absurd. And then I knew he had vertical movement, and obviously he had some horizontal movement, so I broke it down with some horizontal movement numbers also. As you can see here, I put the blue line on the what would be the left side of his head, and then the same length eye spacing. So I'll step through here. So as you can see here, he moved his head to the left roughly 3.9 inches. So in this last one, I went ahead and summarized the horizontal movement and the vertical movement of this deer. So you can see 3.9 inches to the left, 16.9 inches down. And for you trig nerds out there, I actually plugged this into Pythagorean theorem to figure out just a straight line movement distance. And that ended up being 17.3 inches. So this deer had a total straight line movement of 17.3 inches in 0.25 seconds. All right. So just out of curiosity, I went ahead and used all of my data here, and I figured at what frame I would be hitting this deer if I had a faster bow or if I had a slower bow. So right now I'm shooting 287 feet per second. I wanted to check the extreme, so I wanted to check 310 feet per second. And with that, I would be hitting this deer at 0.432 seconds. So let me flip to that frame here. So like I said, I'd be hitting that deer at 0.432. So it'd be this frame right here. And as you can see, it still would not be a good shot. This deer has already moved too much. If I was further back, there's a good chance I would have grazed the top of his back. And then I wanted to look at the other extreme, and I wanted to look at if I was shooting 277 feet per second. So obviously 277 would have taken longer to get to the deer than 287, so I can just go to my last frame. All right, so here's my last frame. And if I were to move 277 feet per second, see how many frames I was going to have to move it. So 277 feet per second, I would have to bump to the next frame. And obviously I don't have another frame after this one, but I think it's very safe to say that at 277 feet per second, I would have completely missed this deer. All right. So the last thing I want to cover here is really the learning aspect of this video. All of this other stuff was interesting and great to know and fun to know. Not that I'm saying this process is fun, but this last part is really where the learning comes in. And I wanted to take this and I want to see at what yardage this deer being this alert, this shot would have hit where I put it. Where I was aiming and my point of release would have been a lethal shot also. It would have definitely been a more preferred shot. So I want to see where that shot would have been a good shot on this deer with how alert this deer was. And to do that, all I really did was take that same ratio I took earlier to figure out at what yard this deer started reacting, which I would say is at 0.217 seconds. In this specific scenario, where this deer is looking at me, it's stomping, it's alert, this would have been a good shot. And it would have been a good situation for this shot at 20.9 yards. So to sum this up a little bit, looking back at all of this information, it showed exactly what I figured. I shouldn't have taken this shot. 45 yards is too long of a shot on an alert deer. And it's a decently long shot on a deer that's not alert. Fortunately, the shot I did take ended up being a very lethal shot. The deer died quickly, but it definitely wasn't the picture perfect shot. And the other two options where I missed, which would have been good for this also. Final one would have been I wounded it, and I have a wounded deer running around the property. But fortunately, I was able to catch this scenario on camera, get good video footage, something that I can break down, something that I can actually learn from, and something you guys hopefully learn from. And I can take this into future seasons and future opportunities and do my best to not make this mistake again. And really the only future solution to this is to not take a shot on an alert deer over 21 yards. But with all of that being said, I appreciate your guys' support. Thank you guys so much for following along. Make sure you are checking out our shop, checking out our Instagram and all of our socials. And I hope that you guys learned something from this video just like I did. I hope that you guys can understand that I didn't take this shot lightly. The shot is 100% not something that I would ever want to happen to this deer. We still have some fall videos launching after this one, and I hope you guys tune in to check them out. And thank you guys so much for following along. We will catch you on the next one. See ya.